We've been addressing the concept this month of radical self-care, a concept which appears in Dr. Lisa Rankin's book titled Mind Over Medicine. And so that's the theme of this month's talks, radical self-care. And today we complete this series by addressing her concluding chapter in that book. The concluding chapter is titled Steps to Heal Yourself. And the three appendices which follow it are part of that process of steps to heal yourself. So I've titled this talk, In the End, It's All About Myself. And the quote which accompanies this chapter is from Dr. Albert Schweitzer. Here's the quote. It's supposed to be a professional secret, but I'll tell you anyway. We doctors do nothing. It's that we help and encourage the doctor within. Dr. Schweitzer, who won a Nobel Peace Prize back in 1952, was not only a medical doctor, but he was a philosopher, a theologian, a prolific writer, and he served extensively as a missionary in Africa. I knew that he had served as a physician in Africa. I didn't know about all that other stuff until I did some research on Dr. Albert Schweitzer. Before he became a physician, he spent several years in the pulpit as a licensed minister. Pretty extensive background as a student of humanity. So now let me repeat that quote from him. It's supposed to be a professional secret, but I'll tell you anyway. We doctors do nothing. We only help and encourage the doctor within. You know, I'm not sure I would agree that doctors do nothing, but I'm all in about the healer within each one of us. And I'm all in that as the medical profession moves toward embracing the truth about the power of the individual to thrive in life and to be active in the monitoring and healing of the body when it cries out for loving attention, each of us individually must also embrace that as well. I was really impressed in Rankin's chapter on steps to healing yourself. She addressed the difference between curing and healing. It's like she read Holmes' books on the subject, or maybe Louise Hay, or Catherine Ponder, or Emma Curtis Hopkins, that healing is a return to wholeness. I'm quoting Lisa here. You can be cured without being healed. You can be healed without being cured. And through right action, you can be both. Now, I ask you, given those three choices, by taking conscious action, which would you choose? It seems like a silly question, doesn't it? The kicker on this, though, is the phrase, by taking conscious action. Rankin reminds us that when we're dealing with illness, the process of being sick, I always put that in quotes, sick, can be an opportunity for spiritual awakening. And when we wake up, we return to our natural state of wholeness. The sections in her book that I'm referencing this morning cover 50 pages. So obviously, I probably won't cover those in detail, at least not all that information on them, unless you want to stay for the rest of the day, order dinner in, and maybe stay for the evening. But this is an opportunity for you, for each of us, to take the time to take it into study ourselves and to advocate for ourselves by studying and practicing these concepts. It's all in here. Many of us find that by reading Dr. Holmes and some of his colleagues, that it's a challenge, partly because the language is somewhat outdated in some cases, and the examples reference life as it was understood almost 100 years ago. The material itself, though, brings a clear expression of understanding the magnificence of being a spiritual being, having a human experience. So the many books and CDs and DVDs, YouTube postings, internet searches that are available to us in today's world can support us in clarifying where Ernest Holmes and other metaphysicians are directing us. And I believe Lisa Rankin is one of those. Before I found Science of Mind as an organized and extensive course of study, I was adamantly following Wayne Dyer. Through his books and tapes, I also discovered Deepak Chopra, and then Norman Cousins, and then Larry Dossey, Bernie Siegel, then Ram Dass, then the Dalai Lama. My point here is that those of us who choose to advocate in our own behalf recognize the opportunities when they appear, because they serve us in the present moment. And they open us to seeing the next step available for us to take. Have you ever noticed that? That you really get into something, you're really excited about it. And it's like doors start opening that feed additional information to you. And you can pick and choose. You don't have to immerse yourself in all of it all at once. In fact, quite the opposite. Being careful about selecting and absorbing is really important, rather than just a download, or we used to call it a dump, now it's a download, of all that information all at once, such that we really don't have or take the opportunity to absorb it and to think on it and to allow it to become a part of who and what we are. My point here is that those of us who choose to advocate in our own behalf recognize those opportunities when they appear, because they serve us in the present moment. And they open us to seeing the next available step for us to take. In our present class on Principles of Financial Freedom, we began the study of this incredible curriculum by establishing a method of measurement for each individual to use in addressing the material available as it relates to our lives. Some of you in the room this morning are also in that class, and you will remember the answer to this question. If this were true for me, would I, what? Be more free. If this were true for me, would I be more free? It's a great measuring stick. It's a great touchstone, a great bellwether to use in the application of new or different ideas. If this were true for me, would I be more free? In fact, it's a great measuring stick in the application of assessing some of the old ideas that I'm still dragging around with me. So briefly, I'm going to address the highlights of these 50 pages, then encourage and support you in pursuing the details that if they were true for you, you would be more free. More free to what? Well, of course, that's up to you individually. For me, that would be more free to live my life vibrantly, enthusiastically, pain-free, energetically, unhampered, unrestricted, abundantly, lovingly. There's an old Tao saying, the journey is the reward. The reward is in the doing. So Dr. Rankin begins her closing remarks by listing 6 ways to heal yourself. And step 1 is the most important, and not always the most obvious. Step 1 is believe you can heal yourself. And then step 2 is to find the right support. She suggests choosing your team. Makes me think of Napoleon Hill and his board of directors, the brain trust. She suggests on your team, whether that be a doctor, a therapist, a life coach, whatever, then interview them. And if they refuse to be interviewed, find a different one. Because in the interviewing process, you are determining whether or not this is someone you can work with and who can work with you. You choose a healthcare provider who believes in you as an individual and believes that you can be well. One who truly cares, one who's willing to collaborate, one who respects your intuition. And in your selection of this provider, listen to that intuition. Do you trust and feel safe in his or her care? How does your body react to being in his or her presence? For those of you who were here at the beginning of this series, you remember, does the doctor always have his or her hand on the doorknob when they come in to visit you? Step 3 is listen to your body and to your intuition. Lisa reminds us that your inner pilot light always knows exactly what you need. And she lists an exercise for to support you in tapping into that, which is lengthy in the book, so you get to go and explore that for yourself. But your inner pilot light in alignment, body, spirit, mind. Step 4, this is my favorite of her list of 6. Step 4, diagnose the root causes of your illness. There's a lengthy expansion of this statement in her book, and it's worth your time to read it. Just let me select one sentence for it for this talk. When you diagnose the root causes of what is triggering your stress responses, you gain insight into how your body may be suffering physically as the result of your mind. I'm going to say that again. When you diagnose the root causes of what is triggering your stress and your stress responses, you gain insight into how your body may be suffering physically as the result of your mind. She also addresses in this step what to do when an illness has already affected you. It's not like it's too late. Uh-oh. My 2-year-old great-granddaughter, Addie, her favorite word, uh-oh. At 2, it's cute. At 42, not so cute. Step 5. Once you have performed the guidance provided in step 4, you're ready to write the prescription for yourself. And what that means is to make a whole health treatment plan of radical self-care. Again, there are several pages of guided actions to achieve this. And you know what? You're worth it. To look at those several pages, to try some of those things, maybe to try each one of them once, and then develop that plan for yourself. Write the prescription for yourself. Step 6, surrender your attachment to outcomes. Now, you need to read the section on this to really understand her position on it. Personally, I've already modified that for myself. However, surrendering your attachment to outcomes is different than determining and clarifying the outcome you expect. That's where the sacred work of affirmation, meditation, spiritual mind treatment, and metaphysical study become your path. When you are clear on your outcome, you are not accepting what occurred as a result of your not being focused on your intention. Well, the remainder of this groundbreaking book is a series of 3 appendices, and they include 8 tips on how to be in your body. That's a loaded statement, depending on where you put the emphasis. You'll notice I said how to be in your body. I find that more powerful than saying how to be in my body. You can do both, however. First, practice being in your body, that is, being aware, mindful, and active. She lists several things to use as measuring sticks for that. The next step for me is how I am as I do those things, after I do those things, and what more can I do to be who I am through the expression of this earthly shell that I call my body. Her appendices B and C are a chronicle, first of her own personal self-diagnosis, and then her own personal prescription. You know, I really admire the author who shares his or her own personal experiences, which are a part of the thesis they bring forth. So often in research, the scientific community goes outside the self because that's expected, so that everything is on a common ground, so to speak. But in this study, for her to go inside to her own issues, to diagnose based upon these principles that she's developed, and then to take action from them, is a courageous thing to do, and then to put it on paper. Of course, you'll want to know her own self-diagnosis, right? Aren't you curious? In order to understand her own personal prescription. Her starting point for these 2 actions was that she was out of alignment with her optimal health. Broad brush. You may want to know more. It's in the book. Earlier in the book, in fact, she lists a number of specific symptoms and body functions which detail that. You may find some similarities in your own life, you may not. But it's interesting to see the progression from that to being in the body and healthy. So in closing, let me say that there are countless books, DVDs, CDs, courses of studies, classes, talks, ideas that are available to us with ideas just like the ones I've talked about this month. Like you, I'm always looking for more, for better, and clearer explanations of the philosophy that I've embraced, because it works for me. And because I believe that life, here and now, is an opportunity to keep learning and to be more effective with what works for me. When something like this comes along and calls to me to pursue it, I'm always eager to share it with anyone who's willing to listen. It surprised me that that so many of you are already familiar with this work, and I wasn't. So thanks to you for putting it into mind so that I could catch up with you. In November, we'll be discussing gratitude and Thanksgiving. In December, we'll talk about the birthing and expansion of consciousness as expressed in celebrations all around the world, through different religions and through different cultures. You know, celebration never gets old. It never gets out of date. So why not grant yourself vibrant good health in order to enjoy it? And so it is.
And so it is.